right, I'm gonna keep running. And then so I'm responding to a question that appeared in one of the videos where someone said, why am I here? And I'm just saying that just as a thought exercise and respectfully to maybe appreciate that either verbatim what the words were, or maybe change the words that is the terms, but keep the expression more or less the same, and maybe just have a thought exercise. And like this type of, some of this is a little bit like existential, which would be the coolest thing if you came on a channel and you asked an existential question that really stumped a content creator, or just opened up a dialogue. That would be one of the coolest things you could do on a platform, I think. So props to the person asking that comment, whether they intended it or not, because it still has the same value. So a deep existential question would be to say, why am I here? Either on the internet ethers or on earth or in life. Why am I here? That's really cool. Where am I here? That's really cool. How am I here? That's really cool. What am I here? That's really cool. When am I here? That's really cool. All that is existential because it can amount to and speak to what it means to exist, what it has took to exist, what it will take to exist, and what it can yet mean to exist. That's beautiful. But if I were to appreciate just as what am I, if I were to appreciate that question as what am I, speaking superficially and from an outside objective, not objective, but maybe both abstract and objective, but speaking from without, not knowing a person. First, I have to be mindful that I don't know who that person is. So they could be younger than me, they could be older than me, they could be a peer of mine, they could be a superior of mine in certain respects, and they could have less experience than me in certain respects. They could have more skill, more success, less success, generally speaking, but also like what can be demonstrated in terms of like a background and a perspective. So that person could be of any stature of learning or strength or initiative or experience or background or potential so I couldn't say that without being very arrogant and egregious and disrespectful, but I can say that I can just appreciate in general terms that a person asking that would be both a cause of some kind and an effect of some kind, an effect of profound causes, not the least of which their own efforts and their previous iterations of existence, their ancestors, which are still theirs and still belong to them, their causes. Your real causes are, I think, yours. The circumstances that would conspire for you to exist and are supporting you and are possible through you are yours, I think, because they're intended for you. But then the effects that you can, with interacting with the causes which are yours to somewhat yours, you can make an effect for yourself and others that can be enjoyed by them or can be suffered by them, and that's a form of a power. And it's, I think, one of the dignities of living is power. That one of the greatest of dignities is power. Power is dignity, and we deserve dignity. We deserve a degree of power that is agency and awareness to make decisions and enjoy what comes behind them, both of enjoyment and suffering, so that we can have life lessons, learning and loving, and opportunities that are really ours. So you're all of that, your causes and effects. You're also, I would imagine, superficial, just because we're inundated with a superficial paradigm, and even the things we take into our body and consume are largely artificial, or at least they're not as they're presented. So therefore we can't get away from being artificial to different degrees, and embracing that might be part of being free of that, but we're just still artificial. So I would say you're likely artificial. Then I'd say you might also be Eurocentric, because not that you would choose to be, or that there's anything wrong with that, with appreciating what's European, but if you appreciate the matrix apparatus and the different, I think that anything that comes from mankind can't help but to be biased, because had something had any intention whatsoever, that you would have an intention that is a preconceived and desired outcome that would necessitate bias to different degree, which would be a shortcoming and an oversight and a limitation of a system, which is a blessing, because that might be the means of sustaining, transcending, and dismantling a system if it's at one point injuring humans. So that bias might actually be a grace, in that it can be undone at one point, but it would be a limitation. But if you appreciate just the values that so that something would have a design and intent implies bias, and therefore skewing, marginalizing, hoarding, concentrating, isolating, depriving, evading, inflicting, is all of that is the matrix. But I think that the matrix is fundamentally a segregation apparatus, because it really does segregate opportunities and outcomes and resources, and also duties and penalties. There's a large degree of segregation with that, but even life itself is a segregation, because I was talking to a person who was pretty deep, like a neighbor of mine, but also a person I went to school with. There's one girl who had when I was a very young person and first moved to the north as an athlete. There was a girl who she had quite a crush. I could appreciate that she had a crush on me. We had some good interactions, like some natural. That was some. I had a little bit of ability to flirt naturally with her when I was young, and then but I somewhat fancied one of her close friends, and but I got an appreciation that she had like a liking for me. But then later on, she dated both this boy. This boy was actually, I think he was he might not mind me saying for the sake of this video, but he was born under circumstances that would be different than normal people, because he was actually born at a university as part of the way that the circumstances of his conception, and also his gestation as a fetus, and then his appearance of being born and his placement into a family that was under special circumstances that couldn't be facilitated without some of the amenities and the initiative and understanding that's part of some of these universities. I won't say more than that, but he had a unique circumstances, but he was of coming into life, but he was also just a deep person. So from that standpoint, he already had a different background than a lot of people. That would inform a lot of his coming of age and coming to understand himself in reality. But he's just one of the deepest, coolest people that I've ever talked to. And he was actually a neighbor of mine when I became older. But when we were younger, he had dated the same girl that was interested in me at a young age. And then also his brother also dated her. His brother, I think, was I don't know if they were genetically related, but they were brothers, and they were like 1 year apart. And so they both had dated this girl that was she had a liking to me at a young age. And some of my confidence as a young person, it came from my experiences, like around her. I would say she'd probably be formative, because she's one person that believed in me or just liked me when a lot of life has never. When someone likes you, they accept you. And many people that I've come across, friends, family, lovers, employers, professionals, strangers, pedestrians, um, men, women, and children, as I've served children as a driver. A lot of people just simply don't accept me as someone that they like. I'm just like something of an anomaly, I think, in life, just because I don't mean myself that way, but a lot of people just simply don't accept me for being myself. A lot of people would like to change me, or are leery of me before I have thought of or did anything against anyone. People are like that, but you have a handful of people who actually accept you, and those might be your deepest, most formative experiences. So this would be one person that liked me and therefore accepted me, and maybe influenced me for some of the strengths that I have as a person and the confidence. But was that girl. But then also this person I talked to, and he was appreciating one time that everything is a bubble. So we were standing on a street corner. Both him and I had not been drivers at that point, but we were adults. He's like, look at all these cars going by. Everyone's in a bubble. And I think that's actually what automobile means. Auto means self. So you could essentially say that automobile means bubble mobile, little bubble driving down the street. But then our housing is in largely bubbles. And I think I've heard it said in a book about songwriting that some people appreciate that the lines and angles of a room and an environment, a dwelling, in modern Western terms, the angles of that are very unnatural, and it actually affects outcomes. So sometimes when you're having experiences like maybe making love, and it's just there's something just a little bit off about making love indoors. I think many people that have maybe different experiences around making love could speak to that, but I think that making love outside is more dynamic, is actually what the real experience is intended as, if it's intended as anything. If anything is intended in life, love making is intended, but also where is significant. And I think it might be more so agreeable and natural and profound out of doors, and being the angles of these rooms and the confinement, it affects us on a deep level. And it might actually affect lovemaking. But this person said we're always segregating. We're always segregating from one another, even in our dwellings, in our transportation, our online presence, we're always so segregated. But the internet apparatus is like that, and it skews. And I would say it more so skews so for Eurocentrism is what it values and favors.